So this is 07:35 hours GMT. 7:35 in the morning of Tuesday, 20th of April 2021. And this is the KhoodeelaarTV television channel. World exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street, that is the newspapers. I'm holding one of them, published from London and referred to collectively as Fleet Street because of the name of the street in central London, where most of the original titles were published from. They moved from there now, but that name, Fleet Street, remains attached. And the other thing is that the description of Fleet Street papers is also made by referring to them as the national newspapers. That is completely wrong, false, inaccurate, and misleading. And it is also typical of the England-centric, little England-centric attitude, which excludes the existence of the nations of Wales, Scotland, Cornwall, and part of Ireland, that is called Northern Ireland. And the fact that it is allowed, these papers are being called national newspapers, shows the denial of the existence of the other nations and the contempt towards the other nations, and also the denial of the imperialist connection with that denial. For example, Wales is not acknowledged, and it hasn't got the parliament like the Scottish Parliament. It has got the assembly like a regional assembly like the London Assembly. And Wales is always used as a tail, as an addendum, as an afterthought of most of the English operations, like English agencies. For example, the description England and Wales. Although England and Wales sound like similar, but there is absolutely no similarity. There is no equality of access to say that the Welsh are supposed to have equal to the English. And the Little Englanders operate also from the base in London. And they exclude the majority of the Northern English areas from any decisive say. The patronizing, corrupt, and anti-democratic and untruthful tag, Northern Powerhouse, exists as a symbol of the insult that the Southern England-based power occupants display towards the people of the North. And the most contemptuous, corrupt of the Southern England occupants and beneficiaries has been George Osborne. Osborne was in the corrupt post of the finance minister, also known as the Chancellor of the Exchequer, when the crook David Cameron was prime minister. Now, today's newspapers have removed David Cameron and his corruption from the prominent coverage that he has been given, or he has been kind of treated to over the last few weeks. And this is the tactical retreat. Well, tactical retreat by the Fleet Street papers from focusing on Cameron under the cover of concern for the fans of the football clubs. And they have done the desperate thing that shows their desperation, because they have put on display through the Fleet Street lying papers the image of Prince Williams. And the image of Williams is being paraded, exhibited on the corrupt newspapers, desperately showing that they mean business, that they are really genuinely committed to the fans, football fans. And Williams has been given a scripted quote saying that he joins the backlash over football Super League. That's completely untrue. That's a lie, because the same paper, The Times, admits that the clubs, most of the clubs that are under reference in this faked pseudo outrage against Super League, most of these clubs have already signed agreements with the Super League for 23 years. So the whole thing is a complete lie paraded by the Fleet Street lying newspapers. Okay, some of the individual items in the Times, say, and we should just go through these ones before we diagnose the particular themed items. The fact that they've got Cameron off the headlines is typical. It's not an accident. And the fact that Cameron's criminality was used by the congenital liar Boris Johnson to hide his criminality. Now, for a very funny kind of reason, this Quentin Letts, who is the official racist of the right-wing papers, posing now as also political sketch writer at the Times. Now, political sketch means that they usually sit in the House of Commons and watch the politicians perpetrate their politics of corruption, denial, fakery, stupidity, ignorance, disrespect, antagonism to democracy and accountability. That is supposed to be the political sketch writers' general collection of themes. But Quentin Letts, who has long been associated with the Daily Mail, who has given him regular platforms, and has now extended his service to serving Rebecca Brooks and Rupert Murdoch at the Times. Now, this heading is obviously intended to mock the MP's concern about threat to soccer. But I don't think this is mocking the MPs so much as serving the particular agenda that he's in the employment of the Times to serve. So he says, Quentin Letts, this thing is described as political sketch. Only 3 paragraphs long, this one today. And that's the one. That is the one. You can see the 3 paragraphs. And what he's saying there is that granite-jawed man of the people, Oliver Dowden, danced his way to the Commons dispatch box. Un point, to make a statement about something called soccer. The culture secretary had psyched himself up for the big match. Before entering the chamber, he thought his hairless chest dabbed some deep heat behind his ears and had his special advisor shout rude chants at him. Give me the hair dryer treatment, Clive. Freeze me rotten till I look like Kevin Keegan. All right, I exaggerate a little. But it would hardly be more factual to call our Olive a convincing man of the terraces. He comes across more a devotee of Covent Garden. If he saw him at a football match, he might ask how long it was going to be until the interval. But yesterday, the minister was in Norman Hunter mode. He closed in hard on the 6 clubs that want to join a European Super League and be chopped, and he chopped them at the ankles. It did still sound a little odd coming from so delicate a flower, though. Now there are 3 more columns spread, not just three paragraphs, the 3 more columns spread. But it is absolutely unjustifiable to read out the rest of it, because Quentin Letts is absolutely creepy and tedious and boring and unenlightening and absolutely in the dark and darkness. The point is that the headline is absolutely correct. If the intention is to mock the MPs concerned at the Super League. As I said at the beginning, the whole purpose behind this national patriotic chants against the Super League is to take David Cameron off the front page and the headlines and spare Boris Johnson the serial embarrassment that Johnson deserves every day. So that's the Times' kind of political sketch writers take. And on the pages, on the same pages where the sketch writer's spiel appears, there is this mainly two-page spread of the heading, which reads, "Clubs signed 23-year contracts as insiders say, we are not bluffing." And then it has got a piece headed, "Billionaires who run top clubs from afar." And then it says, "The big six in line for an even bigger payday." So what this is about is that football has been turned into a brazenly exploited business. And fans, although the scripted words of anguish today attributed to Williams says that our fans are the most important in this saga. Fans are not important. They have not been treated with importance or respect for decades by any of these clubs. And the crisis of the football as a game is the crisis that it has been hijacked by criminal gangsters owning the football clubs. Not just today's headline in the Times, "Billionaires who run top clubs from afar." I mean, billionaires and multimillionaires and their types and their ilks have exploited the football clubs for decades. And this happened when the utilities, for example, the telecom, British Telecom that was, and the water kind of utilities were deregulated, denationalized, and exposed to criminals. Now, all these business operations have always been affected adversely by criminal gangsters. But the extent to which the degeneration has taken place, the degeneration, the disintegration, and the disengagement from the public in whose name they allegedly operate, all of these have taken place in the last, 40 years, 50 years. And increasingly, they have got worse in terms of serving the people and in terms of relating to the people that are in the backbone of the business. The other thing is that because of television, franchise television, that is where the main money is generated. They sell them across the world. And that is a real connection with British Empire and imperialism. I mean, in the context of Britain, in context of UK, many of the franchises that are sold to television channels across the world, especially in Africa and Asia, are facilitated by the raging remnant of the demonstration effect. That is to say, these so-called ex-colonies countries still treat the British model and anything British with the kind of deference that was injected into them by centuries of brainwashing. And it is actually a factor that Macaulay capitalized on, and it lives on. Even in India, which has got the largest population in one state, let's say, India is a big state, but it is a single state, a federal state, but it's a state nonetheless. All the Indian newspapers that were established during the British time, the English ones, are still repeating, copying, imitating the examples, the rhetoric, the allegories, all of those things, even though the British left in August 1947. And the impact of the cultural subordination and the cultural stoogery is staggering in every aspect of life. And in sport, it is as much as in the field of technology, which is where a lot of money is being made by big Indian billionaires working similar to their kind of role models from the West. So these clubs are not making the money from the fans, not as much money from the fans as they're making from the deals to show on television the games. And the fans are being used as the foundation or the platform on which these games are played. So the fans are being exploited by being used to show that there are fans. If there are no fans, then these games, these contests cannot take place, because there would not be any point in anyone watching on the television, because there will be empty spaces. So that is why the fans' presence is important, but the fans' opinions and preference are not even recognized. Even the existence of fans in that context are not recognized. That is why these 23-year-long contracts have been signed without the fans' consent. And the fans would not be consenting to anything like that. But it's post facto that has been done. And all these expressions of concern, outrage, etc., these are happening after the deal has been done. Most of the crucial deals have been done. Now, this is like the, in the context of the British culture, this is like the real ale, campaign for real ale, and the pubs and the drinks and the kind of punters in the pubs. The quality that the campaigners for real ale associate with the pubs of the old, the quality has vanished. And pubs, again, have no longer been kind of controlled by local individual landlords or owners. These are owned, most of the pubs are owned by big conglomerates. And so the quality of the life that people associate with the pubs has gone. And there is this nostalgia kind of invoked from time to time when talking forlornly about the disappearance of the atmosphere of the pubs, the friendly atmosphere of the pubs. Well, unfriendly atmosphere of the pubs is what Keir Starmer, the so-called leader of the Labour Party, who has been murdering the Labour Party politically. He was given a very unfriendly treatment yesterday in Devon, where a pub landlord was filmed shouting words to the effect that he, the so-called landlord, within quotation marks, in our vocabulary, didn't want that man to get into his pub. Detailed reports we have accessed so far suggest that that particular person who was shouting against Starmer was doing a protest, and his protest has been very effectively covered in the media. Protest against the lockdown. And that one wasn't protesting against the destruction of the Labour Party, the destruction of democracy in the Labour Party, the destruction of other democratic principles that people should be entitled to, kind of being served under. So all the myths about the ancient kind of life of the pub, or life in the pub, or life of the users of the pub, they are being invoked from time to time to serve other causes, not to serve the ordinary users and punters of the pub in the old sense, but the images of the punters in the old sense. That is to propagate and promote the idea of a pub being social and societal and suitable for friendly conversations. Those have been taken over by the conglomerates, and the conglomerates are not interested in any of those things as long as the money is collected. And the same thing is happening with the clubs, which are running this propaganda, the so-called friends of the soccer fans. And it is brazenly, it is called the plot. And there is a kind of banner which says, "Fans say no to Fenway's super grid, no super life." We shall come to the concept of greed. That's the one. Remember what only 2 weeks ago Boris Johnson had said about greed. He said greed is good. He literally said greed is good. And the scum, which is now railing against greed, apparently, was complicit with brazen Boris Johnson boast about greed being good. There was no banner against Johnson's greed. And what happened? Within days of Johnson boasting about greed, the greediest ex-prime minister, David Cameron, hit the headlines. And suddenly, Johnson's boasting of greed disappeared. But according to the technology that is available currently, all these recorded statements and utterances about greed being good can be traced back and accessed back what is needed and what is missing from the political so-called environment in this country, in the formal, the elected political environment, the accepted, if you like, the normal political environment, that is the elected ones, is action against these crooks and criminals and criminality. But there is no action because reading, for example, the deadly, deadpan, boring, insignificant content utterance by Jonathan Ashworth, worthless ash, in the House of Commons yesterday about Cronian sleeves and whatever. It was pathetic. It made no demand. And it is meek, timid, ignorant, lacking in the full factual context. Now that is Jonathan Ashworth, worthless ash. I've just edited his name, worthless ash. And he is that because he is not putting forward demands, analysis that he could have done had he been intellectually fit for the job. It's no good asking the criminal, the thieves, why didn't they look for a job or something? And why did they steal? I mean, that is not the question. Every theft has a contextual series of reasons. And every single theft of that kind, that is the millions of 300 million, I think. Anyway, it's a huge number attached to these sums that have been given to these operatives who are not medically trained or, of course, properly schooled, except that they are part of the cabal, they're part of the kind of game. And they're part of the game that is the biggest game in going, which is to deny the truth to the public while carry out the robbery of the publicly owned departments. And what we have done so far is deal with the soccer thing. But there are other issues we shall talk about. As I said, this thing about India being put on the India ban, that is the red listing of India, meaning that India is too dangerous because of the dangerous surge of the dangerous variant and the normal variant of the virus. Now, just a flip on the look at the steals from the pub landlords, so-called outrage at Keir Starmer. Now, that's a series of kind of images. There's a series of images taken from the events that took place yesterday in Devon. And we shall come back to that. Now, there is a piece in the Murdoch Scum which effectively is an admission that Brenda's royal family has been broken for a significant amount of time, that it has been dysfunctional, and that it has been lying, and that it has been racist. All of these things they have been denying the Fleet Street. Whenever they have a story that they think they can manipulate and apply against Meghan Markle, the newspapers have said no such thing exists. And they have always shown Brenda as being very powerful, very strong, very moral, very ethical. Of course, there has been no evidence to show that any of that is true. In fact, the fact that she released, or she was forced to kind of be talked about, reported about being interfering in various internal So they've got this piece in the Scum today on page 12. How to rescue the monarchy. And there is a bullet list of 4 items. Slim down family by weighing up the value of the minor royals. Number 2, rein in Harry and Meghan and bring them back on board. Number 3, no Andrew role until Epstein case is resolved. Number 4, scale back on patronages and engagements. So those are the bullet point 4 lists, or 4 bullet point lists, how to rescue the monarchy. Notice the list. And they've got a fascination with the police-based or police-linked television drama called Line of Duty. And they continue there about Line of Duty, speculating whether the character attached to Kate Middleton has been killed off or killed. We shall not go into the script in any more detail than we have just done. So they're talking here and there about the ongoing miniature efforts taking place to reconcile the 2 brothers, Harry and Williams. And the Scum is carrying on the inside pages, apparently against the splitting of these clubs. Now let's see what it is saying. So that's the inside pages of this scum. Split hits the fans. And this whole kind of row has taken over references to the other events and exchanges and communications that have been taking place among the royals. Their focus is, irresponsibly, their focus is on the royal family linked, or they have kind of tried to up the kind of antagonism towards the splitting of the clubs by bringing in Wills. But Wills is not being original. And the fact that he didn't mention one word about the people involved who have been affected and will be affected mainly in the courts and other things that the clubs are going to impose and add. And the Guardian is saying that now, as the United Nations bureaucracy has stepped in about the Tony Sewer race report that was actually written by Munira Mirza and other liars and stooges. That is now clearly, according to the United Nations behavior, one of the things that they can kind of parasite the United Nations against. Remember what we've been saying about this guy, the current Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. Now, Guterres is the one that keeps issuing preacherly sermons every day. And he chooses the affinities and similarities that he ascribes, to himself and to the items or images from the public kind of platforms. Now we shall read the Daily Mail after we read these Financial Times and see what they're giving. The Financial Times is giving Boris Johnson an undeserved plug. But I think that is motivated by the Financial Times wanting to be included as a good newspaper by the Financial Times' main owners and users. And the Financial Times is not Financial Times as news. The Financial Times is covering up the main activities of the financial kind of sector, criminal activities by banks and bank-like comparable outfits. And just as Angela Merkel prepares to leave office, there are already signs of various reactionary attempts and activities being mounted to do away with what Angela Merkel is going to leave behind and to challenge the accuracy of some of the observations contained in the published letters. So we shall be looking at more of these items in the papers today in a bit. And there is this headline or heading in the Daily Mail. The heading is not representative of the evidence contained in the piece underneath. And they've got a 2-page spread about the criminals that I mentioned before I saw this centerpiece or 2-page spread on the Daily Mail. And they're saying that the money ball moguls, this is the kind of parade of the money-making billionaire crooks that have grabbed hold of the game of soccer and turned it into multi-billion pound operation that is not about the fans at all. It's a multi-billion pound operation. And that operation is not being focused on by the papers. And this is about India, the 2-page spread about India, and Johnson having to be forced to cancel the visit. And there is a piece on the comment page, page 16 of the Mail, by somebody called, is described as, within quote, Professor Philip Thomas. And the piece is headed, "There will be no third wave of deaths." And I should know, because unlike other experts, this academic has accurately predicted every stage of the pandemic so far. And they're still shielding Boris Johnson. We shall be discussing the evidence of corruption by the elected mayor in Tower Hamlets. And for the benefit of those who don't know or necessarily don't live in the UK and who may be watching this or watching various references to the campaign in local boroughs like Tower Hamlets and Newham, where at least on paper there is acknowledgement that there is a call. So we shall be going into the details in the next parts